Hi, it's Nicole, and today I am going to be sharing two cards using the March stitching die of the month from Spellbinders. I am getting this every month for 2025 and kind of using it as a break from layouts, a creative kind of workout, I guess I would say. To get started, I was really wanting to kind of push myself to use like some brighter, bolder colors, especially for my card base. So I'm pretty sure most of the cardstocks I used are just a bunch of different random ones from my stash. About the time I finished making these, Spellbinders had launched the new color wheel cardstocks, so I'm going to actually use those in some later videos this month with some different products. But for now, I just pulled out some from my stash and I picked this like darker teal to do my base. And then the March stitching die of the month is pretty much like a big cover plate that you can stitch. And then you can see over on the right, there are two sentiment dies that do like the where like it pushes into the paper, and then you have the die that cuts out the border for the strip. So for this first card, I'm actually going to cut it into my card panel. And so I just made sure that my plates are covering everything but that top edge of the panel. I did have a little bit of a hard time getting it through my machine, and it just took me a couple tries to figure out, what was the best method to stick my plates in. It's going to take me a couple seconds to figure out that if I just shove the whole sandwich the other direction, it will go through just fine. I've said this before, I typically don't like to film at night, but this was one of those ones where I was on a video call with a friend and was like, you know what, I can do some die cutting. I don't have to think about it. And I was having a rough go, but I got that cut out. And after I saw it cut into the panel, like you can see it over on the right, I was like, oh, I like this. Now, I don't want to stitch directly onto that because I don't want to have like the ugly backside shown on the inside of the card. So I cut a separate panel, just that cover plate. And for the first card, I don't know how to explain this. There's like different ways that you can stitch this. With this blue one, I stitched where like all 5 strands go one way, and then I came over and did the opposite direction. So no like weaving, they're just kind of overlapping. Now, I've mentioned this, I want to say in January and February's video. For me, when I have a product that I think is going to be a little bit challenging, so for me it's the stitching die is kind of stretching my creative muscles and stuff, I like to try to make at least 2 cards, and then I like to pair them with like a good basic that I can use for both cards because it helps me kind of get to know the dies. It helps me get things used that I've purchased and maybe I haven't had a chance to play with yet. So I pulled out this floral set, which I actually got on one of the, I think it was like a warehouse sale. And it's the Colorful Expressions Blooms, which is actually the large die of the month from August of 2024. So I felt like this would be a good one to kind of pair with this big cover plate. So I didn't really film a whole lot of the stitching, mostly because I have a hard time remembering to stay in frame. So I do apologize for that. But I did like a rough estimate of where I thought the florals were going to land. And then when I mapped out where I wanted to put the florals like over on my card base, I need to go in and stitch like that top right section and a couple of those ones that are going to peek out through the florals. At first, I was like, I don't think I need to stitch every single spot because, at this point, I'm assuming that the florals are going to do a pretty good job of covering up a lot of that. And here you can see how messy the back was for me. This is totally fine. It's hidden, nobody's ever going to see it. I like to just kind of secure with some tape when it's this type of a stitching design. And here you can see a little bit better what I was talking about. I'm going to do all 5 like rows going one direction, and then I'm going to just come back and go the other direction. So they're more overlapping, not weaving. The second card that I did, it finally occurred to me that I could weave. I think that's the fun part of getting these dies every month, is they really make me think. And even if I look at like the image on like the website or that comes with the product that, you know, somebody has done a sample for to kind of give you a general idea, there's so many other things that you can do besides that. And sometimes I have to really remind myself of that. So usually like the first go of a die set, or in this case, like a stitching die, I tend to kind of be a little cautious and try to figure out what's what. And usually about the time I get to like a second or third project, I'm like, okay, I've got a good feel for it. I can kind of start changing things up and, you know, changing how I want to do them. I'm going to quickly just poke out some of these holes that didn't completely pop out on their own. They're completely cut. They just kind of like to stay inside the paper. I added foam tape to the back of this to give it some dimension and a little bit of added strength to the front of this, because I am going to put a bunch of florals on top of this. I actually really like that you can kind of see through into the card. I don't think I've done something like this. I see it all the time in videos. And so I was glad that it kind of popped up into my mind that I was like, you know what? Use it as like the cover of the card. Don't just cut like the panel and glue it to like a solid card. Like stretch yourself type of a thing. So now I'm just going to try and transfer these florals over to, you know, how I had loosely set them out. I do know that you can do like the press and seal trick or like a sticky mat. Sometimes I like to just take a photo and individually place them. It's just kind of the mood that I'm in. I felt like with this, I wanted to make sure that I was individually placing them just to kind of really make sure that the glue was going where it needed to be and it wasn't going to kind of seep out into the inside of my card. And I want to make sure that if it's touching the stitching, that it has like a little bit of extra glue to kind of soak into the thread. And I did try to keep like my color palette for my florals somewhat minimal. Sometimes I can go a little bit overboard when it comes to picking colors. I feel like I'm such an indecisive person that choosing colors is like what takes me the longest. And then trying to figure out which specific color do I want for, you know, which flower. And sometimes I just have to sit here and just cut a bunch of stuff, make a bunch of florals and kind of do some trial and error. And then leftover florals just go back into my die storage for next time. And I have used leftovers all the time. I think that's why I like to pair florals with different products, because they're just really easy. The February stitching dies, I used more of like a mini floral set, and this was fun to play around with like some really big florals. Yes, it takes up a lot of space, but I feel like it visually gives the card just like a lot of interest. I did go ahead and weigh it down to let everything dry. And then again, I grabbed another like basic to pair with this. I will pop the name of this on the screen because I'm not 100% sure which one this is, but it's a glimmer sentiment set. So you've got these like 6 sentiments here and they're all stuck together. So you kind of do them all at once. And I just did them on the same color that I did for my card base. And I'm going to go ahead and cut all these out and then pick which one I think that I want to use on this. A lot of times if I don't have a specific need coming up, so like somebody's birthday or a holiday, I tend to lean more towards like thinking of you, thank you type of thing, because those are kind of good to just have on hand. And with this, I think this was the first time I used the rose gold glimmer foil. So that was fun to finally open and get it used up, or not used up, but kind of get it used. It didn't, I wouldn't say it's like the smoothest transfer of the foil. That could be user error. That could be colored cardstock and foil. I'm not 100% sure. My understanding is that the new Color Wheel cardstocks are supposed to be like a different formula and a little bit smoother to have a better application of foil. So I'm excited to kind of try that. I'm actually working on some stuff today. So I kind of want to find like a similar color, pull this set back out and kind of test it and see if it works better. Because like I said, I tend to lean towards it being user error because I'm just kind of over here winging it. But I feel like it was okay. It wasn't the smoothest foil, but you can still read the sentiment. It still looks cute. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the overhang from the bottom of the card, and I was set to do the side as well. But when I cut the bottom and I was like looking at it, I actually really liked having the florals overhang on the right. It was kind of a happy accident. I kept going back and forth on whether I should trim it or not. Ultimately, I left it. And so I just need to make sure that when I use that card that I put it in a larger envelope and more than likely like hand deliver. I wouldn't mail that one to somebody, especially just with how textured the front of it is. With the second card, I actually have 2 panels stacked and glued together here just to kind of make it a little bit more like thick, a little sturdier. And I wanted to do kind of like an ombre. So I'm going to do darker color purple at the bottom and kind of lighten as I go up. And I should have slowed this down, but you can kind of see when I come back up through the hole, I'm doing like a weaving. So over, under, over, under. And then when I come through the next one, it's under, over, go back and forth. And it just kind of gives it a little bit different of a look, a little bit different kind of style. And it was super easy. I was kind of kicking myself for not having done this on the other card. But like I said, the first time that I go to like stitch a die, I tend to just go off of the like manufacturing image. And then as I start to play with stuff, I start to figure it out. I did cut a piece of vellum that I'm going to put back behind this. I'm going to go ahead and pop this up on foam adhesive as well. I just like the added dimension that this gives. And at this point, I was set to go ahead and just put this on a white card base with like a flat front. But for now, I'm just working on the panels. So I'm going to do pretty much similar to the previous card. I'm just going to kind of do my florals a little bit different. And then for this one, I used one of the sentiment dies that came with the stitching set. And I used the Spellbinders gold cardstock. I love that stuff. That cut so good. I just put some foam adhesive behind that as well to kind of pop it up. And then I'm going to come in with a bunch of the leftover florals that I have. I did go and cut some of those with gold as well. I just felt like bringing in a different kind of color. So like the other card had that bright teal. This one's going to be a little bit more muted, but I'm going to bring in like the shininess of the gold paper. And I didn't really have a rhyme to my reason with the florals on this one. I just kind of had fun and started on one side and started gluing stuff. I don't think it's the most visually balanced cluster of florals, but in the end, I think it's still fun. I loved using like a bunch of the purples to try to play in with the purple like ombre stitching that I did in the back. With this one, I also was trying to not cover as much of the stitching. I wanted that stitching to kind of peek in between the different branches and florals and stuff like that. So I just kind of pick and choose, tuck some stuff here and there, kind of just tried to get a little bit of all of the different colors above my sentiment and below my sentiment, and just kind of keep going until I feel like it is full and looks good to me. I think when I was taking the photos, I was like, oh, I probably could have balanced this a little bit better, but in the end, I think it's still good. I'm already trying to figure out for April's stitching die of the month, like what I should pair with that one. I feel like florals I keep grabbing because it's just an easy choice. I think florals just go good with so many things. So I'm already trying to figure out like, okay, do I want to keep doing florals or do I want to do something different? So here is where I was like, oh, I don't love that when the front panel is solid, you don't really get to see like the vellum very well. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the first card, where I'm going to use the cover plate on the front of the card and just make sure that my plate does not touch the folded edge of my card. I did try to use my little tool-in-one to kind of pop those out. It worked pretty good, but I didn't know where my like mat was. Like you really should use it on like a squishy, foamy something. I actually think it's, for me, I like just taking my paper piercer and poking them out. I will say the stitching dies do cause a lot of like paper mess just from all of the holes, but having those pre-cut holes for stitching makes it go so fast. I'm going to add liquid adhesive behind the card panel and pop that on the front. And that's pretty much it for that card. So 2 cards with the March stitching die of the month, paired both of them with the same floral set, and came out with 2 kind of visually different end results. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I'll catch you guys later.